know we did.
day.
Yeah.
Right.
There we go. Because didn't it kind of start off as a standoff?
Yeah.
It wasn't that the original report, it was a standoff. And
Yeah, she had a knife and she
Yeah.
wouldn't listen to the
And then
man.
didn't she get
Dropped the knife,
arrested
dropped the
again,
knife.
like 2 days later or something ridiculous? I know that coming to lives in court for opening statements, and it was bizarre because the defense attorney was like basically saying, yeah, they asked this, and yeah, he was not with the gun, and this, and this, and this, and this. That doesn't mean you did it. Like, I don't know, I think that does.
Well,
It was just like,
I was in
it
court
was the
for-
strangest
Oh
opening
my
argument I've ever
God,
heard.
That's so wild. I was in court with Cummings, and the judge said, you might be in the same, but I didn't do it. He said I didn't do it. Yeah, you were just walking down the streets
With a gun.
rifle in your backpack with bullets. That your fingerprints are all over the murder weapon.
And he was there, he was at the location where it happened, but that doesn't mean he was the one that shot him. It's like, there was no one else there, and he ran through the fence.
It's
And there's like
crazy.
it's one of those ones where you're like, the guy's gonna keep out because there's so much evidence against him.
Yeah.
But
Do we have extra room to move that, do you think? It might. It's okay. It's fine. Nah, well, it's fine.
we're not gonna show that anyway.
Okay,
I know, no one,
sorry.
ever-
You
no
want me to
one
move
knows,
it to
no
the
one
side?
does, no, it's fine.
So you guys live a lot. Well, they have me at none, because we don't have enough phone talk. We have none. We don't have a reporter in the morning.
Oh my God.
Good afternoon. You guys ready?
Yep.
Okay. So we're here to talk about 3 cases. I think Joe indicated the order in which we're going to do them. So, first case, I'm here to report that Tanisha Green, 26-year-old woman from the town of Amherst, was arraigned this morning before County Court Judge James Barnese on a 5-count indictment. 4 counts of menacing a police officer, which are D felonies, and 1 count of menacing in the 2nd degree, which is an A misdemeanor. The defendant was arraigned this morning at Erie County Medical Center, and she has been remanded. From here, this case will be assigned to a Superior Court judge, and we will get a return date from that judge as to what the next appearance will be. At this point in time, as I indicated, Ms. Green is remanded, so she will remain in custody, but she will also remain at the Erie County Medical Center, where she is receiving treatment for injuries she suffered in this incident that I'm going to describe to a certain extent. I know that the court ordered a forensic examination, so that'll be part of the process and the procedures that the court follows. But essentially, this case involves 2 incidents. The first one, they occurred over the course of 2 days in a row. The first, it started on Monday, October 27th. The second incident happened the next day, Tuesday, October 28th. It started on Durham Drive, where Tanisha Green lives in the town of Amherst, and it ended with her being shot by an Amherst police officer. And as I indicated, she's recovering from her injuries at Erie County Medical Center. So at about 10:30 in the morning, a civilian called 911, and the Amherst police responded on October 27th at about 11:30 in the morning, or no, about 11 a.m., so about a half an hour later. The 911 call concerned Tanisha Green's behavior. The complainant, the victim in that case, was concerned that Green had been behaving in a threatening and alarming way towards her, and that prior to the police actually arriving, Green menaced 2 separate civilians with a knife. When the Amherst police arrived at 11 o'clock in the morning, the defendant refused to exit her apartment and talk to them about the complaints that they had received, and she had a large butcher knife in her hand that she refused to put down. The police talked to her and tried to de-escalate this situation. It lasted approximately 3 hours. The Amherst police were concerned, obviously, about the other civilians that were there, but also about the defendant's welfare. Ultimately, they backed off of that situation and left her in the apartment complex, in her own apartment, when she put down the knife inside her apartment. They went back to the Amherst Police Department. They prepared charges for her, but Amherst police officers were posted at the apartment complex to deal with anything in an immediate way if something were to happen with respect to Tanisha Green. The plan was the next day they went back to the apartment on Durham Drive to inform Ms. Green that she was being charged with menacing from the incident that had happened the day before with civilians. They went to her home at about 11:30 in the morning to talk to her, and when they arrived, Tanisha Green came out of the apartment with a large butcher knife and was threatening to kill the police officers. She refused to put down the knife despite numerous times being directed to do so. She made multiple threats to kill police officers over the next several hours and stated that they would have to shoot her because she was not going to put down the knife. The Amherst Police Department called in their emergency response team. They arrived about an hour later. at about 12:30 p.m., and they continued to try to convince her over the next hour and a half to 2 hours to drop the knife. She continued to threaten to kill officers and refused to drop the knife. The Amherst police continued to attempt to de-escalate the situation. They used non-lethal methods, including what I'll call a pepper ball spray that they fired in her direction. Pepper ball releases like it's similar to like a pepper spray, but it had no effect on her. It didn't stop her physically, and it didn't affect her in any way that they could appear to de-escalate from her perspective. She refused to drop the knife. At one point, Green actually took out lighter fluid and sprayed it towards the officers. After she did that, they decided that they should not use the next step, which would have been a taser, because they were concerned that she might have gotten lighter fluid on herself, and that if they used the taser, that it might ignite the lighter fluid. So a couple of hours had gone by, and approximately 2 p.m., the defendant still had the knife. She still continued to refuse to put it down. The pepper balls had been used multiple times, and they had no physical effects on her, and she continued to ignore the officer's requests and commands. Finally, the defendant, with the large butcher knife, and it has about an 8-inch blade, it's been recovered from the scene, she advanced toward the police officers through a doorway to that apartment building, and they were certainly concerned that they were going to be, that she was going to use the knife against them. All three officers were concerned. One of the officers fired pepper balls at her again, had no effect, and another officer discharged his firearm, shooting her at least twice, once in the abdomen, and we think the other shot injured her in the ankle. She immediately fell to the ground and dropped the knife. The knife, as I indicated, was recovered from the scene, and Green was immediately provided first aid. She was then transported to the hospital, where she has been since this incident occurred about 10 days ago. As I indicated, she's been treating for the injuries that she suffered, but we are now moving forward with this case with the indictment action by the grand jury. It's important, again, that I note that this defendant is presumed innocent unless and until proven guilty. But as I noted, the grand jury completed its investigation and returned 5 counts of menacing. Our office has determined that the officer's use of force was justified in accordance with New York State law. There are hours and hours of body cam footage of this incident that happened over a 2-day period, and a police officer may use deadly physical force when it is necessary to defend themselves from what the officer reasonably believes to be the use or imminent use of deadly physical force. The police officers in this case conducted themselves with professionalism and patience and tried to de-escalate this situation without any success. They only used deadly physical force after hours of attempting to de-escalate the situation, and their use of non-lethal force was unsuccessful, and they only used deadly physical force when the defendant came at them with a large butcher knife. Luckily, she sustained injuries but is going to survive, and she's going to be treated at ECMC, and as soon as we know, we'll let you know when the next court appearance is scheduled for. That's all I have on this particular case, but happy to take any questions on that case before I move on to the next one.
Did you mention where she was shot? I'm here, sorry.
Yeah, she was shot in the abdomen, and we believe she was shot in the ankle. We don't have full clarity yet on all of her injuries, but those 2 areas we are pretty certain that's where she was shot.
And Amherst PD, they just recently had, a couple months ago, another guy jump out a window and try to stab them. Is this something that police are more concerned about, these kind of knife attacks towards police?
Yeah, obviously they're concerned anytime anybody uses deadly physical force towards a police officer. It's not just Amherst. We just had one in the city of Buffalo recently. And, these are very traumatizing situations, and they have to act quickly, and I think they also have to act, with patience and carefully, and they try to de-escalate these situations. I think it's clear in this case that they did. Unfortunately, it was unsuccessful, but But yeah, these are disturbing situations for police officers to be involved in. But they have a responsibility to respond to these scenes, and other civilians were involved. You know, the allegations include the menacing that had happened the day before. And so, you know, I think officers try to do their best to de-escalate these situations, and unfortunately, that didn't work in this case.
Are they stepping up patrols in the area? I mean, there's a lot of neighbors around that saw it, I know that. Are they stepping up patrols in these areas? Is this a bad area of Amherst?
I don't think it's a particularly bad area. It's certainly not, that's not been indicated to us. It's a, you know, they got a call and they responded to it, and I think the Amherst police have done an exemplary job, at least in this case, for sure. Anyone else? All right, so the next case is People versus Dale Cummings. You know, as I'm sure you all remember, the jury returned a verdict back in June of this year of guilty on murder in the first degree against Mr. Cummings. He shot and killed 2 Bangladeshi men back in April of 2024. They were 2 handymen that had gone to this home where Cummings was essentially holding up and living without anybody's permission. And when they got there, they were essentially ambushed by Cummings. The jury found him guilty last June, and we appeared this morning for his sentencing. And I'm pleased to report that the judge sentenced him to the max. Judge DiTullio sentenced him to life without parole, so he will be doing life in prison without parole for the conviction on murder in the first degree. And he was also sentenced on the criminal possession of a weapon, second degree, and the criminal possession of a weapon in the third degree. Those sentences will run concurrent to his sentence of life without parole. You know, this was a really awful case for the community at large, but also, of course, for the Bangladeshi community in Western New York. You know, Mr. Yusuf, the 39-year-old victim, left a wife and 3 kids. She was actually pregnant at the time with their 3rd child, and she has since had that baby. That baby is now 10 months old. There's also a 3-year-old surviving child of Mr. Yusuf and his wife, and a 7-year-old child as well. You know, the wife, the widow, appeared today virtually for the sentencing. Not long after this homicide, Nusrat is her first name. She moved back to Bangladesh with her kids, and you know, this is a devastating situation for her and her family, and they're back in Bangladesh. But she appeared today via, you know, a virtual appearance that we were able to arrange, and she made a strong recommendation to the judge that the judge sentence this man to the maximum sentence allowed under the law. And I give her great credit for doing this. I know this is a devastating crime for her and her family, and I think she made a very, you know, compelling statement to the court, you know, before the judge handed down the sentence. The second victim, Mr. Maya, was a 59-year-old woman, or 59-year-old man. He left a wife and 7 kids. The oldest boy, the 23-year-old young man, and he had kids, by the way, all the way from 23 down to age 3. And I know that family also moved out of the area. You know, this crime was equally devastating to them and their family. You know, his wife and her 7 kids, they moved down to Maryland, where they had come from. They'd only been in the Western New York area for about a year, and you know, they moved back where they had more family down in Maryland. You know, they also participated in the sentencing. They didn't do it live or by a virtual appearance, but they did so by submitting victim impact statements. And you know, I can only say that I'm glad this part of the criminal case is over for them. And I know this is a devastating loss for both of these families, and it was shocking to this community. And we're glad that the judge handed down the maximum sentence allowed under this case. So, anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to try to answer them.
What was it about this case that made it a first-degree case?
The fact that Mr. Cummings killed 2 people in the course of the same criminal transaction. That's it. So we indicted on murder in the first degree because two people were killed during the same crime. Anyone
I
else?
was in court today for that sentencing, and Judge DiTullio asked the defendant, do you have anything to say? And he basically said he didn't do it. So then they signed a thing for an appeal. What's your comment on that, I guess?
Well, I know he's maintained his innocence. Obviously, you know, we feel like the proof was overwhelming. The jury agreed. They were out for about 2 hours. You know, there was a lot of evidence here, a lot of forensic evidence, a lot of digital evidence. You know, and you know, he maintained his innocence, but you know, I think the jury got it right. Anyone else? So the third case, I'll be brief on this case. You know, I know that the community is interested in it, and you know, Shane Cronin appeared in Erie County Court today. Again, this was in front of Judge Barnese. This case was assigned to Judge Barnese, County Court Judge James Barnese, and Mr. Cronin was indicted by a grand jury, and that indictment was handed down in May of this year for an incident that happened in, I think, February 11th, 2025. Cronin was accused of and is now admitted to going into a Buffalo school. It's a building that contained the Buffalo Museum of Science and Public School number 59. They're separate parts of the same building, but he went into that building and he attempted to kidnap a 7-year-old child, little girl. And he also was accused of attempted to lure a child, the same little girl, and endangering the welfare of a child. So let me just explain. The indictment included 5 separate counts. The attempted kidnapping in the second degree, the attempted luring of a child, the endangering the welfare of a child, burglary in the third degree, and the 5th count is attempted assault of a teacher who he punched. Now, all of those incidents occurred, and the most serious one, of course, is the attempted kidnapping in the second degree. But there are 4 felonies and 1 misdemeanor. That was handed down in the indictment by the Erie County Grand Jury, and Mr. Cronin showed up in court today and pleaded guilty to the entire indictment. He was not offered any reduced plea. He was not offered any plea at all other than plead guilty as charged, and that's what he did. He pled guilty before County Court Judge James Barnese, and sentencing is now scheduled for January 21st of 2026. You know, I know that there are going to be some significant input. There will be some significant input by the victims in this case, and that certainly includes the school and the employees of the school, not just the teacher. But I know the principal of that school was heavily involved in this case, and obviously the family of that little girl were also involved. So if I said, I think the girl was 8 years old, as a matter of fact, at the time of the incident, you know, certainly we're relieved that Cronin accepted responsibility and that we're not going to have to put this family back through the trauma of her almost being kidnapped from this school. I'm glad to report that the defendant accepted responsibility and he's now pled guilty. I'm not going to get into much more detail about the case because the sentencing is scheduled for January, and I don't want to do anything that would potentially jeopardize this plea. But again, I'll be happy to take questions on it. I know some people were in court today, and you may have some questions.
Has the school done anything to step up their security, and do you think that it's, I guess, safe to have a public, public thing like the Museum of Science connected to elementary school?
So my understanding is that it's a secure building. Okay, obviously he was able to get into the school through the Museum of Science. You know, I know that the school district is undergoing its own investigation. My understanding is that investigation is continuing, and I'm sure it'll include, you know, an analysis of what their security measures are like. But, you know, the good news is that he was caught, he was stopped, and he's now been held accountable for this, you know, potentially terrifying crime. So, any other questions?
Should parents be worried if their kids go to school there?
Yeah, I got 4 kids. I worried about my kids every day, and I can't tell. I'm not going to ever tell parents not to worry about their kids. I think you have to give them instructions and tell them to be be cautious and give the kids the right lessons in terms of dealing with strangers and be careful. You know, we should expect that our kids are safe in schools. And, you know, I'm hopeful and confident that the Buffalo schools will come out with an answer to what they're doing and what this, you know, how this was allowed to happen and what steps they've taken to address the security concerns.
What kind of sentence is he facing?
So the C violent felony that he pleaded guilty to, that's the most serious charge, attempted kidnapping in the second degree. So that carries with it the maximum sentence of 15 years. Okay, now I know that the judge has made some sort of sentencing commitment. I don't want to comment on it right now. I believe it's less than that. You know, I also know that our victims, and that would include, again, the school district, that they are going to ask the judge for the maximum sentence. We informed the court of that, and we are going to stand behind the victims and ask the judge for the maximum sentence. And again, that could be as much as 15 years. You know, the extent to which there is a commitment and the judge is going to have to determine whether he's going to abide by that commitment or not.
And he was from out of town, right?
Cronin?
Yeah.
Yes, Cronin is not from Western New York originally.
You know what he was doing here in Western New York?
I do not know. Anyone else? Thank you.
What was he doing here? Well, it's obviously they're trying to kidnap kids.
He ran out of kids at his own place.
They all do in there.
Well, doesn't he have a record of this and wherever he came from?